Let's take a look at North Carolina's 2023 season, what it could be, and can they find themselves back in the ACC championship game against Clemson, against Florida State. Time will tell. If you start off with how they finished last year, they went 9-5 in 2022. Drake May became a freshman phenom and arguably the front runner for the Heisman Trophy this year behind last year's winner Caleb Williams. You were the ACC runner-up. You lost to Clemson and Cade Klubnik in Charlotte last season. Still had a really, really good season, but ultimately it didn't finish the way you wanted it to. You lose your offensive coordinator. You bring in Chip Lindsey to replace him. You lose Tony Grimes to Texas A&M. But outside of that, there really aren't too many notable losses for this North Carolina Tar Heel squad. Now, you did lose Keyshawn Silver, defensive lineman, who ends up transferring to Kentucky. You lost Jacoby Criswell, quarterback, who ultimately was not going to play in the grand scheme of things anyway with Drake May still there. You lost Chris Collins, an edge, to Minnesota. You lost three guys, Dontavius Nash, Tymeer Brown, and Ra Dilworth, all to East Carolina. Now, the last guy that transferred out would be Jonathan Kim, the kicker. But again, outside of those guys, nothing just too impactful of transfers. You also got Amari Gaynor, the linebacker from Florida State, who transferred in. You got Ontavious Lane, transferred from Georgia State. You've got Derek Allen, who transfers with Nate McCullum from Georgia Tech. And then you've also got Willie Lampkin, the Coastal Carolina transfer. You get Drake May back. You get Miles Murphy back. Two leaders on this Tar Heel team. And then you look at the recruits and the transfers they brought in. You brought in 3 4-star defensive linemen. I think they were 3 of your top 4 signees. You bring in 2 4-star wide receivers. Those are the other 2 of the top 5. It's a really, really good class when you look at that. Then you swap over to the transfers. You get Nate McCullum, the wide receiver out of Georgia Tech, Devontae Walker, the wide receiver out of Kent State, Elijah Huzzy, the DB out of East Tennessee State, and Armani Chapman, the defensive back that missed the spring with shoulder surgery from Virginia Tech. So, all in all, not a bad offseason and not a bad look on paper for the 2023 North Carolina Tar Heels. However, when you break it down and you start looking at their schedule, that's where things could get worrisome, because it's not just a brutal schedule, but it's a schedule where you have really no breaks. You open up the season with South Carolina, then you play App State, a revenge game from last year. Yeah, you won it, but it wasn't pretty. Then you play Minnesota at home. That should be a really fun game to watch, in my opinion. PJ Fleck versus Mac Brown. That's a game I'm going to keep an eye on. Then you go at Pitt, which isn't an easy place to play. Then you get the 3-game home stretch. Now, luckily, these games are at home, but they're not games that you can just take lightly and expect to win. Syracuse, Miami, and Virginia. Miami, a big one, getting their quarterback situation and everything handled, bringing in a lot of top recruits. I think Miami could be a sleeper team this year for the ACC with Mario Cristobal. Virginia, I don't think Virginia is just a world beater team, but they're decent. They're good enough. Same thing with Georgia Tech. You go on the road to play Georgia Tech after that. So you play five home games in a 6-week span. That is in North Carolina's favor. After Georgia Tech, you play Campbell. Then you get a really, really good Duke football team. Duke is another sleeper team in the ACC. They improved a lot last year. They had a really good quarterback. He's back. Don't sleep on the Duke Blue Devils in 2023. Revenge game at Clemson from the ACC championship game last year. Then you get NC State on the road as well. So you finish your season brutal. You open the season with 3 brutal weeks in the first 4. Then you get pretty much a 5-week home stretch with 1 short trip down to Atlanta to play Georgia Tech. That's like a 4-hour drive, something like that. So not too bad of a trip there. But North Carolina cannot take anybody lightly this year. I'm expecting them to go probably in that 9-3, 8-4 range. I don't see this being a team that can go 11-1, but I don't see this being a team that's going 6-6 either. It's a team that's going to be middle of the pack, can probably win some games they shouldn't, lose some games they shouldn't as well. So for me, North Carolina If Drake May has a Heisman-worthy season, a Heisman-winning worthy season, you're probably looking closer to that 10-2, 11-1 mark. I'm interested to see how Clemson's going to be, Miami, Minnesota as well. And then you've got some games that, if you're a North Carolina fan, you're going to get great football every Saturday. South Carolina, Minnesota, Pitt, Miami, Duke, NC State. That's 7 games that are all going to be, in my opinion, probably one-possession games on the opening line, the opening spread. And then probably by the time the dust settles, it's going to be a one-possession or 10 points or fewer as well. So, North Carolina, you got high hopes for this season, but I think if you're looking at a 9-3, 8-4 season come December, I don't think it's something that you should hang your hat on and be disappointed in.